What's up? And welcome to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll, and this is episode 3 during the quarantine. And I am not joined by co-host Allison Sullivan, even though she lives literally 7.5 minutes from my house. We can't do it.
Look at us. We're like obeying the rules. We're being such model citizens right now.
And when people think Taylor Schroll and Allison Sullivan, they think people who follow the rules.
Yeah, they're like immediately obedient.
I really want to go into that Bible passage about women and obedience, but we won't. We won't do that. We won't do that.
I don't know. I think we should.
No,
I think that's right where we should go.
I think I could have that conversation with many people. It terrifies me to have that conversation with you.
Good. I like it that way.
So we are recording this as we have been for the last couple of months. We are also recording the video. It is available on Forte Catholic's YouTube page. But so obviously people watching on YouTube can see Allison and can see where she is, but I want to just kind of jump into that real quick. So I have a few observations, but Allison, I want you to first describe to the people where you currently are recording this episode of the number 15 podcast in Estonia, the country of Estonia, which I learned was a place this week whenever I got an email that said, "Hey, you're one of the top Christianity podcasts in Estonia." And I said, "What's that?"
Get out of here. I mean, there's probably only 15, but I mean, no.
So that's what somebody was saying. Somebody was like, I know one person from Estonia. And I'm like, to be honest, and there's only 1 million people there. I've learned so much things about Estonia this week. They were like, there are only 1 million people there. I'm like, well, if your friend listened, that's probably why I'm in the top 15 Christianity podcasts in Estonia. So
okay,
where are you?
I've told the kind listeners several times that I am practically Amish, and technology really can make me sweat profusely through my clothes, makes like fever blisters form, just a lot of anxiety. And so I don't mind messing up my own projects, my own technology. It's anxiety upon anxiety to mess up your technology, the guru that you are, the good friend that you are. And so I have our internet boxy thingy.
Yep, that's the correct technical term.
It lives in my daughter's room. And so I kind of carved out a cleanish corner, and I am perched, and I mean literally perched. I'm like kind of like doing a position, it requires a lot of skill and agility just to hold things just right, so that you can get the signal that you need, Taylor, because this will not fail because of me.
Well, it probably will, but neither of us will find that out.
Well, it won't be for a lack of effort. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. In about an hour from now, we will both find out if the recording worked as we planned.
Mercy. We're not in the clear yet?
No, not at all.
Oh.
I recorded with your friend and mine, Liv Harrison, remotely for the second time. And I can't believe I did it because the first time went so terribly. The second time,
she's worth it, Taylor. You know it.
Well,
did you just freeze, or are you like expressionless and wordless?
Yes.
What just happened?
Yeah.
I think you froze. That was a really funny time to freeze.
You are also frozen, and I think it's for comedic effect. I liked that you froze immediately after you said that you're sitting right next to your Wi-Fi box, like this was going to work. And then we were like, hey, is this going to work? And then immediately it froze.
Happened.
There we go. We got disconnected. Okay, we're back.
Do you know why?
I think it was my internet. I switched things and now it's working.
Okay, can I tell you something? Because I don't think you heard any of that.
I heard. I know exactly what happened. All right, let's just hop right back in.
Okay. She's worth it.
Yeah. Well, sure, that's fine.
She is totally worth it. Liv, you're worth it. You're worth any technological trouble or explaining or re-explaining. You're worth it.
Well, here's the thing. I explained and then re-explained, and then she yelled at me for never explaining. And then after we recorded, it didn't sound very good, and I had to spend hours on it just to make it like passable.
Well, you were just really patient with me just now. Like you were even kind of using a little bit of what I would imagine as a dad voice, if that's okay. You know, it was really nice and kind. So my anxieties were alleviated until you said we're not in the clear. So
it's fine. I mean, like, to be fair, it took a fifth of the time that it did for me and Liv. I didn't start saying choice words at her until.
Well, I also have a podcast, so I'm not, completely a virgin in this area, and so I think that she deserves compassion.
Well, I used compassion until I used all of it up. And then I only have a certain amount of compassion I can give per day. And I used my week's worth.
You have a quota. You have a compassion quota.
No, it's not a quota. I don't need to meet that number. It's a maximum that once I use it, it's gone.
Totally biblical.
Very, very much so. It comes from, I need the respect from the women in my life that... Oh man. Oh boy. So you are sitting, literally you're sitting on your daughter's bed, and I have a few observations. One,
I'm in a squat. I'm like got all the lactic acid going. I'm about to get rhabdo.
No one knows what that is.
Oh, come on. All these CrossFitters that listen to your show.
Yeah, because that's my demographic. You know how like every time I say I'm like weak, lazy, and overweight, everybody's like, yeah, that's my guy. No. Okay, so what is rhabdo? Do I ask? Is that a thing we can talk about?
I don't know. It's like when your muscles work too hard and like protein goes into your kidneys. Jot that down. That's like a total medical. I'm not very sciencey, but that's probably exactly right. I nailed it.
So here are the two Taylors. The original Taylor that was in very good shape and worked out for 6 hours a day. That Taylor didn't know that because it didn't matter. I pushed through everything. And then that Taylor died and this one arose from the ashes. And all that was left was the ashes. And I don't care because I'll never work that hard to get rhabdo.
I love resurrection endings. This is great.
No, I'm not the resurrection. You weren't listening. I'm the ashes. My only use is to be put on people's foreheads once a year to remind them that Jesus loves them. This is great because like whenever we record in the same place, like there are pluses and minuses to everything. I love hanging out with you. I love when you're here. But now like when we're sitting next to each other, we're kind of like looking back and forth at the camera and you.
Right.
Now I get to see your reaction whenever I say something mildly funny, and I'm really enjoying this.
Oh, well, good. I am an expressive gal. I wish my face would quiet down a bit sometimes.
Yeah, I've seen your face say things that you didn't want to say.
So there was a teacher in high school once, and she stopped, like in the middle of teaching, stopped. And she, looked at me and goes, Allison, are you happy? And I said, I like looked around, I was like, yeah. And she goes, tell your face.
What a loving teacher. I feel like that's the kind of campus minister I am. I love people by letting them know things that will help them in the future, but make them not like me in the future.
Oh, Well, you know what, though? It's probably not like you in the present, but appreciate you in the future. I think it's fine.
It's called sacrificial love. I will say them, I will tell them something, and the sacrifices, they will no longer be my friend. Okay, other observations that I have. Your hair looks great. And
thank you.
We just, so like on YouTube, I just posted a video of you and I getting together to do some ministry. We stood 6 feet apart. This was a couple weeks ago before everything went crazy. For the well, you look confused. Your face is talking.
I know. I was like, what did I forget?
Yeah, you don't. I'm surprised you forget any encounter with me. I'm nothing if not
block
memorable.
It out, maybe.
Yeah. So we got together.
Go ahead,
we stood 6 feet apart. You gave a talk and I led worship. And our good friend Andy Shaggy Cordy commented on the YouTube video.
Yeah.
And because like every time we do ministry, you're like you get dressed up and dolled up all pretty, and you do your makeup and you wear your fancy clothes and your hair looks great. And that's how you looked for this thing, because we were trying to simulate what it's like to go to that event in real life. It was just digital. So you looked great. And Andy, we love Andy. He's a comic writer. He's very funny, very good guy. And he commented on the YouTube video and said, that's not Allison Sullivan. I've seen Allison Sullivan. Him and his family watch the podcast. Like, they'll be watching this right now and be like, hey, that's Dad's name, you know? And they'll be like, that's not Allison Sullivan. I've seen Allison Sullivan on the Forte Catholic podcast, and she doesn't look that nice.
Well, and what was my response to you?
Your response was, who the heck is this guy think he is? I'm like, he's a friend. It was a joke.
I was like, somebody needs to tell him I'm cute everywhere.
Yeah, and we could say that. And again, people have free will and can believe whatever they want.
No, this needs to not be debatable. I don't care that I'm in my quarantine outfit. I have not changed clothes in 8 days. This is fantastic. I was kind of born to quarantine. And thank you for the hair compliment. I curled the front of it, not the back of it, because who's going to see that? I think that's kind of the equivalent of like the news anchorman not wearing pants.
Yeah. I was going to tell a story and now I won't, so I can keep
Why? Inappropriate. I love, Taylor, how funny is this? Is that you, of all people, have become my barometer of what's appropriate and what's not. I'm like, Taylor, can I do this? And often, I mean, honestly, more often than not, you're like, nah.
Yeah. So here's my job. There's an equivalent. My job is to keep everyone's career going.
You are my focus group. How funny is that? I
like my friends and I want them to be successful. Some of them, if I don't like them, I'll tell them to do the opposite of what I think is correct. But I like you. You're cool. But here's the thing. When it comes to so we do a talk training, and I speak for a living. It's kind of a thing that I do. So all of our new missionaries at Ablaze, every summer, they come in, and I've been leading or co-leading this talk training for 5-6 summers now. And like, I was like, here's how you give a talk. We do like 3 days of in-service, and then they give their talks, and then like me and their peers kind of give them, okay, this was great. This wasn't so great. Let's fix this in the future, right? I give all the rules in a talk. And then they hear me speak over the next few months, and they see me break most of those rules. And they're like, Taylor, but you said, I'm like, right. You can't get away with saying those things.
Yes.
I can. I'm not sure why I can.
Yes.
But I can. But
yes.
So there are some things that you're like, can I say this? And I'm like, no, you can't get away with it with your demographic and who you are as a person.
Right.
Everyone already views me as the village idiot, so I can get away with a lot of things.
Yeah, this is a really marketable skill because you either give me a hard no, or you give me like a, I don't think that's good. You have also given me the, I wouldn't, but you could.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And then you've given me the, yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So one of those things here recently is what we are going to talk about today. But wait, I have one more observation, and then we'll use that perfect segue that I just ruined. One more thing for the people watching on YouTube. Right behind you, there is something that looks exactly like a monstrance. And in the middle of that monstrance, it's hanging on your wall. There's 2 of them, actually, but there's one right behind your head. And it looks like a monstrance. There's like the rays of sun coming out from it. And right in the middle, there's a circular place where you would think, if you're Catholic, that's where the host goes. That's where Jesus resides. But instead, it's a mirror that you look at yourself in. So are you saying that you are Jesus in the midst of this monstrance-looking mirror?
Okay. A couple of responses. Number 1, I was not very Catholic when I bought these at the Hobby Lobby. And so I didn't even recognize them for what they resembled. Number 2, only you and your vanity would consider that. Like,
I don't think so.
That has never
everybody is watching on
all.
YouTube like, wow, Allison's so vain, and she's teaching her daughter to do the same. It's in her daughter's bedroom.
I will say, you can't tell it from here, but it's not in a place where they can look at themselves. Like,
I think you can work very hard to find ways to look at yourself.
No. Then it is a tool.
I'm a tool. Okay, so
we agree. Look at you. Quit saying eye to eye with me, Taylor.
Look at this. Okay. All right. Here we go. Whenever you see eye to Jesus, whenever you die, he's going to ask you about that mirror. But that's just preparing you for that once again. Okay. So speaking of things where you're like, hey, Taylor, can I do this? One of those things, you and your husband have been spending your time very differently throughout this
Yes.
pandemic that we find ourselves in. So before we get to you and your problems, what does your husband do, and what has he been doing to fill his time over the last couple of weeks?
Well, so he happens to be a Mayo-trained infectious disease specialist that also works for the health department. He has a master's in public health. So he has found himself very much in the spotlight during this pandemic. And whilst in the spotlight, he's heroic, he's calm, he's calculated, he's kind. He is very much shepherding our community through this very difficult time. That's what you wanted to know?
It is. He's an infectious disease doctor, and there seems to be an infectious disease going around. So it's his job to fix all of these things.
Running rampant. Yes, ravaging.
All of the things that you just said, that you were just very complimentary of your husband, who won't listen to this. So I'm not sure why you're complimenting him so much. But all of those things, I want to keep those in mind as you share what you've been doing with your time.
Yeah. Yeah. So Mama's discovered TikTok.
And we're not going to get into how old you are, but let's just I just want to bring up again, we've already mentioned that it took a little bit of time to set up this internet connection that we have now.
Yeah.
Okay,
but I'll have you know, thank you very much. There is a trending hashtag called Moms of TikTok. So I'm not alone. Okay. I am not alone. I think that I have discovered a sleeping talent. It is a talent that has laid dormant my entire life. And as it turns out, I have an alter ego. She lives on Facebook. Her name's Miss Savage. And I frankly nail it. Yeah. I don't know what to say about that. I won't apologize.
You don't have to apologize for the ones you've posted. You would have to apologize profusely with some of the ones that you've sent me asking, is this okay? Because that answer is heck to the na-na. So
yeah, that was a hard no you gave me. I appreciate it.
So here's the thing. I think it's awesome that you are having fun on TikTok while your husband is saving the world. But because you are having fun, like I also noticed that none of your children are in them. Which just signifies that you and I are the same and ignoring our children while we're putting out content for everyone else in the midst of this time. But
they want to do stupid stuff. They want to do these really lame dances, and I'm like, no, watch this, y'all.
Sure. I thought you were going to be like, they want to do stupid stuff like coloring. I hate coloring. I'm an adult.
No.
So
they want to do stupid stuff like science and math.
Schoolwork. I mean, why are they doing that? So my wife and I have been enjoying your TikToks, both the public ones and the ones that I, as your agent, have said, no, please do not do that. But here's the thing. You're finding a way to bring joy to yourself primarily in this time.
Yes.
But also to some other people that you're sharing this with. So I'm proud of you for living out the Forte Catholic message, even when you're not with me.
Yes. Thank you. You're rubbing off on me, Taylor. I don't know if it's for better or for worse, but I'll take it because
I don't either. It's probably, most people would probably argue for worse if you're becoming more like me, but whatever. But here's the thing. I think it's a great thing that you're bringing joy to people, but also because you're becoming more like me, I need to give you the advice that other people have given me that I haven't listened to.
Yes, good. You're steps ahead of me in the annoying department.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe this will help you more than it has helped me. You know how you said, like, I found a new hidden talent in this time? Yeah. I just want to point out that it's in a time where stress is very high, our entire lives are falling apart, and we have more time on our hands, which could mean we're finding gifts that are great, or we're saying, I hid these for a reason. And I just want you to be able to figure out which one of the two it is over the course of this time.
Thank you. That is really good discernment right there. That's great.
All right, well, take that to prayer. And I've never ended a segment by saying take that to prayer, but that's what we're going to do now. Whenever we come back, we're going to be with our good friend, Edmund Mitchell. Allison just did the sign of the cross. We love Edmund. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Welcome back to Forte Catholic. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you are missing Edmund Mitchell dance as I would imagine Eradicate wood from Pokemon. If you're not familiar with what Pokemon is, just picture a large rat with big buck teeth, and that's how Edmund is currently dancing. Allison, you didn't join in this dance, and it seems like something that you should get behind.
I was observing because what I didn't get that whatever you just said. I got a really high kitten.
That's exactly what I was doing. That was what I was channeling in my brain.
Yes.
Well, good. I'm proud. I'm proud of both of you. I really am for this moment in general.
It might have been a kitten rabbit hybrid. I can't.
That was something that crossed my mind, and then I thought, no, Allison will appreciate a really high kitten.
Okay.
And if you listen to the last segment, we all know now that right when Allison's done with this recording, she'll do a response video on TikTok.
For sure. Count on it,
cool.
People.
She's a TikTok mommy.
She is. That was creepy.
A Tik-Tommy.
Tik-Tommy. That's also wrong. That would be a male.
Okay. All right. Well, it's 2020.
So people are making fun of themselves for being on this app for being over 30, and I'm like,
Hey, that's what everyone said about Facebook when it started. Well, this is just for college kids, and now we have old people putting poop emojis on Facebook, right? Like
that's all that's on Facebook now.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what happens with most of these apps and technological advancements.
You guys, I mean, in posting hilarious coronavirus quarantine memes. Yeah. I mean, is this not the best meme season ever?
Now is the time. We've been preparing our whole lives for now is the time for the content.
Well, I think all the funny people had real jobs. And so now that they're non-essential, they're like, let me just make a few memes.
Exactly. Now, all the people that have been hating on all this stuff are now like, you know what? Maybe I'll try out this social media content online stuff, right? How do I activate my webcam?
I saw you post something along those lines, Edmund.
Yeah, it was my hot take. It was, hello, everyone, and welcome to Making Content Online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I've been copying what Edmund's doing for years. How dare you all start now?
I know, right? I know. You're doing a good job. You're doing a great job, Taylor.
Allison was just, she told us in the first segment that she was using a lot of agility to stay where she was, and she just showed us her knee. This is, again, very inappropriate, Allison.
Wait, agility to stay where she is right now, currently?
Yeah, I got a perch just right.
That was my question as well, Edmund, which is why I brought it up. I'm glad you're
picking y'all look really cozy. Congratulations.
I bought a new chair because I live here now, like not at my house. I live right here. I do everything right here. I make all of my online content here. I play video games here. I ignore my family here. Like, this is the chair that I sit in all day, and my back was starting to hurt because I'm not over 30 because I am 30. And but I've been falling apart for a long time. So I'm glad to have a very new chair, courtesy of the Forte Catholic patrons, patreon.com/Forte Catholic.
Wow, what kind of chair did you get? Like, what kind of materials is it made out of?
It's made out of black leather. I feel like you're asking and you don't care, and you're doing this as a joke.
Well, do you think is it biodegradable, or is it going to get stuck in like a turtle, inside a turtle at some point?
I am a user of straws. That's all I'll say. Right, cool. Someone named this Elvis Presley because of the black leather.
Okay. That's
you named your chair Elvis?
I didn't. Someone else did on the internet.
Are you calling him Elvis, though?
No, that'd be really weird to sit on Elvis.
This reminds me of Allison just a few minutes ago saying she has to perch just right. And I think appropriate perching is some instructional videos we can look forward to in the shortage of toilet paper.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I tell you what, I lived in Japan for 3 years, and I'll have you know that they get into a full squat in a hole, to use a hole in the ground. And I am convinced that's why they are such a healthy bunch.
I think it's good. Yeah. There's like a some type of thing you can buy online. Oh, the squatty potty.
The squatty potty. Yes. It's science, people. This is science.
We just have a stool, though, so we just use a squatty stool. But we
I like that joke. Potties. It's a good joke.
Oh, get it? Squatty stool.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, this is what we plan to talk about for sure.
Always comes back to poop with me.
It does. So you sent, I texted you, Edmund, and I was like, hey, look, my job in all of this is to make everything feel like it's not real and to just have fun and be joyful through all of this time, right? Okay, everybody knows what's going on. We're not pretending that it doesn't, but this is our escape. And
Yeah.
Edmund, you were like, okay, so nothing about the coronavirus. And
Yeah.
then in direct Edmund Mitchell fashion, you sent me a couple things that have literally nothing to do with anything. Not just nothing to do with the virus. They make no sense at all, but I'm thrilled to talk about them. Like when I came on your show called The Show, which gets very confusing, we talked about some pretty random things, and we're just going to do, here it is. It's the little crossover of Forte Catholic.
Can I interject something really quick?
Yes, please.
What if I said
think
no?
I think the show is I think the show is a brilliant name. If I ever have a bar, I want to name it Some Bar.
Some Bar. That's hilarious. Do you want to go to Some Bar?
You want to go to Some Bar? It's good. It's good. Okay. Sorry.
The bar down the road.
Yeah. We could go on and on. Get us back on track, Taylor.
Well, I tried once, and then you said, "Can I interject?"
Did you have a stroke, Taylor?
I'm done. What do I need? Do I need to ding a bell that I'm done now?
That would be
okay.
awesome.
Wait, let's bring it back. Okay, so Taylor, you've covered so far that you don't want to cover anything substantial on your podcast, and so we're just going to random news bits right now, and seeing if we could somehow relate them back to something more substantial that's not related to a virus that's plaguing our globe right now.
Yeah, so words I want to avoid are things like plaguing. So
Okay.
Let's do something different.
All right. So China, how about China? So no. This thing that we came across, this article, is that some people have internal monologues and some people don't. So,
Right.
like in movies and stuff, when people, sometimes there'll be like a scene where the actor's kind of, staring out a window and thinking to himself something. Well, some people can't do that. Some people can't think like a monologue to themselves or narrate to themselves. And it weirded people out, and it caused us to ask a bunch of our friends. And this person who found this out started texting a lot of his friends asking this, like, surely everyone can do this. And found that, I don't know, something like 10% of the people he asked said, yeah, what are you talking about? Wouldn't that be nice if you could do that? And they had no clue. And I just think this is insane. It's insane to think about.
It's totally insane. But you have an inner monologue, right, Edmund?
Correct. Yeah. Taylor, do you?
Yeah.
So
yes.
Of course I have an internal monologue, because if it became external, I actually would go to hell. You know that thing where it's like you can't help the thoughts that come into your head, but like acting on them is where the sin comes? My internal monologue, whenever I die, I know this isn't theologically accurate, but whenever we die, our bodies and our spirits, our souls are split. And I feel like I'm going to be split in 3. My body is going to go into the ground.
Because your body's so large, you have to be split in 3? Your body
I'm going to punch you in the throat. The things that my inner monologue are saying right now.
So it'd be 2 pieces of your body and 1 soul.
No, big body going to a big hole in the ground.
All right, a big hole.
Yeah,
okay.
Spirit going to purgatory for almost the rest of eternity. And my internal monologue will go to hell.
Okay.
Okay, but can I, without exposing anything to like gross or weird, can I have some themes? Like what are the things that are going on inside that mind of yours that
can I give you mine? Can I give you mine?
Please.
Oh, it's normally things like you're a garbage person, you're not good enough, this isn't great, why are you doing this? Stuff like that. Just like the classic.
About your own self or about other people?
No,
See,
about me.
That's where Edmund and I are different. I think all of those same things just about everyone else.
I could have given you that. Edmund, I'm with you, babe.
Yeah, I have way more, just like the unquestionable kind of self-criticism is like
criticism.
Thing. Yeah.
See, I think I've told people on the show before that, my show. See, I don't like you. Every time I say I've told people on the show before, I mean mine, but now it sounds like I'm promoting yours, and I'm not.
That's why I did that.
I think this was crafty of Edmund.
I know.
That's
Let's go down to the bar down the street. So now I forgot what I was saying. My internal monologue against the two of you is just raging right now.
Okay, well, when you guys count, so this reminds me of, there was an interview with Richard Feynman, who's like a physicist, and he said that he tried this experiment where he asked people to read a line of text out loud and try to count in their heads, or to do the opposite, to try to count out loud and say something in their heads or whatever. And he found that some people, when they're counting, use their verbal, whatever part of their brain is verbal. And some people, when they're counting inside their head, use a visual portion of their brain. So they count by seeing numbers, and then some people count by saying the numbers in their head.
Yeah.
And the people that count by seeing numbers could still read and talk out loud while counting up to 10. But the people who count by saying numbers in their head couldn't say numbers in their head and read something out loud. They get lost.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. This is so fascinating.
So when you guys count, do you count visually or verbally in your head?
Verbally.
Verbally. Okay, me too.
Yeah,
Life comes to me in words.
I think anyone else is insane.
Well, it makes sense. Look at us all. We're very highly verbal. We're like, talking and recording it and hoping that people listen to our verbs and words.
Prepositions.
Does anybody? I've never heard that people didn't have an internal monologue. The only conversation I've ever had is who you hear. Like, I hear my voice exactly how I would say it going in my head. Like, so I think there's a couple that I've seen. I say it with all the passion that I would say it out loud in my head. Other people hear their voice, but at like a monotone, and other people hear like Richard Gere, like some other voice that I'm not sure. Morgan Freeman. That would be
I prefer
awesome.
an Australian accent.
Oh wow, yeah, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Is that what you hear though?
No.
I wish I could change it.
Yeah, like you can change Siri.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Allison, do you hear yourself or the lady that we see on TikTok?
So if y'all think I'm dramatic out loud, you should hear me internally. It is some serious melodrama, but it's me. It's just an amplified version of me.
Dang. So what this really brings up what people's experiences are, especially when I think of, trying to be empathetic towards others and what they're experiencing. I think we walk through the world assuming that everyone sees the way we see. And there might be like certain things, we could pick up on, like gender differences or like different differences just that might be more apparent. But then when we start thinking, all humans must feel or act or perceive things this way. And then when we realize something like this would radically shift the way 20% of people are experiencing the world. Yeah. It's kind of, unsettling, I think, in a good way. I think in a good way too. Yeah.
Because, and I don't want to bring up any like controversial personality tests or anything, but they've been really helpful for me because when you realize what you are or how you lean or where you like are the heaviest or whatever, not that those things label us perfectly because they don't, but you just got annoyed with me. Don't look at me like you hate me, Taylor. What?
What?
Okay, so that reminds me, Edmund, what you're saying, it reminds me of the personality tests. And, not that they label people perfectly because people can't be labeled perfectly, but it has knowing what I am and knowing how I lean and then understanding where other people lean and lie heavy, like what categories they lie heaviest in. It's been very freeing because it's like, oh, I don't not like the party because I'm a jerk. That's just not kind of how I'm wired. Or like, oh, you're not argumentative about this thing because you're a jerk. It's just kind of how you're wired. And it turns out you didn't wake up that morning determined to tick me off. It's just how you are.
Yeah, totally.
So I like that is now your assumption because whenever I do things intentionally to tick you off, you think the best of me. I appreciate
I'm like, oh, poor Taylor. He's just a I. Or, well, you're not an I. You're just a J or a P or a XYZ.
Well, I'm seeing letters forming in my internal monologue and I'm reading them.
I think this is really important too, just to examine so relevant of a topic to explore and just think about. Like, it kind of brings up unexamined biases or just the idea that there's this, I don't know if you call him a scientist, but I forget what field or discipline he's in, but Jonathan Haidt has a book called The Righteous Mind and why good people are divided about things or something like that. And he talks a lot about this idea of moral intuitions, that we have these moral intuitions that whether or not they're nature or nurture, there is a moral intuition that sometimes is different across different cultures or different upbringings. And we don't know always why we feel that way at first, but we kind of try to rationalize this emotion that has, emotion has been demonized so much, but emotions are good. Emotions are the way we intuit things deeper than our conscious reasoning. And so he talks about how, in some Eastern cultures, there's a much more intense moral intuition towards we thinking, like group thinking, community, like sacrificing for others. Whereas in Western societies, there's much more of a moral intuition towards individual, like my individual right, standing up for my self-expression and reason. And these aren't good or, it's not that it's good or bad one way or the other, but there's this kind of moral intuition or gut feeling towards certain things that we don't always examine, or we're not conscious of them happening. And I think that's really helpful. I mean, to think about that when you're having dialogue with people, or when something comes up where you're like, man, how could this person possibly be thinking this way about this? That there might be something deeper than what they're saying about it. There's something deeper that they're experiencing coming from these different places of upbringing or culture or background.
Yeah, I just had an interaction with a friend of mine, or like who are like an acquaintance that's become a friend pretty recently, where some things were said where it was just like, where are you coming from? Like, I don't think you're a bad person, but how are you assuming that about me? And it was coming from a very different worldview, very different understanding of the facts, and it was like, you think I'm that bad of a person? And then it became a phone call, and I was like, here's where I'm coming from. And they were like, oh yeah, you're not like they were like demonizing me, and I was demonizing their response to me because of how they perceived of what I was doing and saying, right? When we finally had a conversation and talked about it, we were both like, we both think that we're great, that the other is a great person. And how did this happen? And it came from very different ways that we interact, very different ways that we see the world, and that we experience the encounters that we were having.
And could you imagine if like part of that argument hinged on you accusing the other person of thinking something, right? And then that person is one of the 20% that doesn't know what you're talking about when it comes to like, well, I wasn't thinking that, and like, because they're maybe much more visual or abstract in their head. They have no clue. And so you get in this whole big argument about that without examining the fact that something that who would have thought to say, well, what do you mean by I was thinking that, right?
Yeah. Well,
I'm reminded of the time I woke up very angry with my husband because he cheated on me in a dream.
Oh man, there's a comedian that has a whole bit about that.
Really?
Yeah, there was a comedian we were listening to that had a whole bit about that. About men and women.
Okay, but hold on, I can't not say this. So you mentioned the difference in like Eastern and Western cultures, Edmund. So I lived in Japan for 3 years. And there is positive peer pressure that you do not just think of yourself, you think of the group. And I know that we're not supposed to be talking about this, but how we are handling here in America, the directives to socially distance, we feel rebellious, and our country was really kind of founded on rebellion in a way. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to get really anthropological about it, I mean, it's about the American dream and making a name for yourself. And I love American ingenuity, so I'm not saying that it's bad or good, but you tell an American, hey, you can't do that. Hey, you need to do this. And we kind of stand up a little straighter, and so we're having trouble taking these directives. Whereas in Western cultures, or Eastern cultures, people aren't wearing masks because they don't want to get something. They're wearing masks because they don't want to give something. No one would walk around coughing. Like, no, people don't do that. So it's really, really interesting differences. We lived there for 3 years, and I have a jillion examples.
Ironically enough, you're saying all this while I've been trying to give the directive that we've been out of time for a very long time.
It's so fun.
We're done. It was fun. But you need to be a part of the we and not just a me, Miss Sullivan. All right, Edmund, thanks so much. Y'all go follow Edmund Mitchell on all the social medias. Go listen to the show with Edmund Mitchell. He's doing great stuff. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with a final segment that is much better than anything Edmund's ever done. We'll be right back.
All right.
We did it.
There we go. And Allison expertly brought back up Corona right at the end.
I know. I'm editing that out.
Well, it was a good point. I thought it was good.
It was 2 minutes over time, and on the topic we didn't want to talk about.
Well, we did have some in there that when the internet cut out.
Well, I'm aware. It was a 20 minute, 30-second segment that I'm going to have to cut out a bunch of. But, whatever. I'm liking assuming Allison's in tone of monologue right now. I'm enjoying this.
You know me as well as you think you do.
Yeah, I do. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I'm Taylor Schroll. That's still Allison Sullivan sitting in her daughter's bed to be able to record this. We're having a good time today. We're having some fun. I want to thank Edmund Mitchell again for coming on.
He's so great.
He's great. I love Edmund.
So easy to talk to. I feel like he does this really great job of being super silly but going deep all at the same time, and because those seem like opposites, I don't know how he manages that, but he does.
I like how you just complimented on him on the thing that this show is based on. Thanks for not saying that about me. I appreciate that very much.
Do you try to go deep, Taylor? I hadn't noticed.
Oh, shut up. Okay, so you and I had a difference in opinion the other day, and it wasn't we didn't fight about it at all, but it was a difference in how we approach things, and that's what Edmund and I were and you were talking about in the last segment, and I kind of wanted to bring it up and then transition into what we're going to be talking about here in this segment. But we were talking about well, we don't have to do all the details, but zooming out, it's like you are used to like giving a talk for like this coming Sunday's reading or this coming Wednesday's reading or like something that's coming.
Sure, something
ahead,
upcoming.
Right?
Yeah.
I actually more so talk about stuff that just happened. And I think that says something about the two of us. I know what it says about me. Here's what it says about me. I often talk about on this show, which releases on Wednesdays or Thursdays, I talk about last Sunday's reading because I have forgotten what last Sunday's readings were about. Also, I'm lazier than you, and I'll think of content while I'm in Mass and then share it the next time I record, right? But also, I think it comes from this thing. It's like, I think most people forget Sunday's readings by 2 p.m. on Sunday. So I think reminding them halfway through the week is a good thing. And you had a different opinion, which I think both work. It was just funny how we talked about it.
Yeah, I think it's fun to prepare people for the readings so that when they are in Mass, they can reflect on, okay, so you know how if you have a handful of, let's say, jelly beans, sure, and if you throw them against a wet wall, some of them will stick, some of them won't. And
I didn't know that actually.
What?
I didn't know that. Oh,
it's true. Try it. Go ahead, try that. So, but if you have some background knowledge for something, then hearing it again can take a deeper dive. So it's really very altruistic of me, Taylor, that I want people to experience a deeper dive whilst in Mass.
Well, here's how your altruism works in real life. Because every time I hear you, like you give great talks. I hear you give the talk on Wednesday night. You know what I'm doing in Mass on Sunday? Not paying attention to the homily or the readings because I already heard them on Wednesday.
You're an outlier. We've already established this. I think most people are doing what's intended.
Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to see how much of an outlier I am. I'm going to put out a poll and ask people where they lie on this. I do think I'm probably in the minority because we've all agreed that I hear scripture and hear things differently than anybody else does. But this is still my show, Miss Sullivan. You are a great partner in this, but you know what we're going to do?
Are you telling me to back off?
No. What I'm telling you is I'm going to force you to have a conversation about a reading that already happened because that's funny to me.
Oh, good. All right. I see. No, you can strong arm that. That's fine.
Okay. So this past Saturday.
I did think you were telling me to quit being so opinionated, and that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do.
Well, maybe we do need to talk about that women being subordinate passage that we joked about in the first segment. Oh, man. Okay, so no, we're going to talk about this past Saturday's daily reading, which here's the thing. This is how I think about these things. You know, we've got the two things. I like the reminders. You like the preparation. This is actually neither because it's another way. The reason we're talking about this is for a completely different reason. Okay. It's because very few people ever hear the Saturday daily readings because most Masses are in the evening and they have Sunday's readings, right?
Yes.
So the only people that go to Saturday morning Masses are the people who are Catholic enough to not listen to this show.
but also during the week, you might read the daily readings because you have structure during the week. So on a Saturday, all bets are off.
Right. Nothing makes me feel worse every day than the fact that I have the daily readings emailed to me, and most days start by me deleting yesterday's because I didn't read it and it was an unread message, and I don't like unread messages. I'm a bad person.
Right. You're that person. Interesting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed.
I don't know if you mean the sarcastic answer or I don't know if you're surprised that I delete them or surprised that I get them in the first place.
I'm going to let you wonder.
Oh, well, you've made me wander a lot throughout this episode, so making me wonder is nothing new. Okay, so this Saturday's reading, I actually read because it was Saturday and we've been cooped up for weeks and I had nothing else to do. That's where I am spiritually. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Gospel of John. And I was reading it, and I had a very tailored reading of this, and I wanted to share it primarily with the listeners, but you're here too, so I guess you could hear.
Perfect. Great. Right time, right place.
Some in the crowd who heard these words of Jesus said, "This is truly the prophet." Others said, "This is the Christ." Okay, so I always like where the gospel just drops us in. Some in the crowd heard these words of Jesus. What do you mean? What words of Jesus? Like we had, so you have to. I like how my first word was scroll back because that's how I read the Bible now. But I was doing the page flipping with my hand. So in my head was scrolling, but in my hand I was doing this because this seems stupid. Okay.
Yes. It's the way we tape things, and it's like nobody's taping anything anymore. I'm
going to video this holding a fake camcorder up on my shoulder, and those haven't existed in 28 years. So earlier he said, "Whoever chooses to do his will shall know my teaching is from God, whether I speak on my own. Whoever speaks on his own seeks his own glory, but whoever seeks the glory of the one who sent him is truthful, and there is no wrong in him." So he just said this profound thing way earlier in the chapter. There's more things that he said that we'll get to here in just a second. But he gives us these two things, right? So this is the prophet, and this is the Christ. Okay. So Allison, you make a living out of talking. The prophet. Why are these two things pitted against each other? What's your initial thought? Some are saying he's the prophet. Some are saying he's the Christ. Right.
Well, because one is human and one is God. I mean, we can all. Here's the thing about prophets is that they foretell things, and you and I can have a prophetic voice. But we are certainly not the Christ. We are certainly not God.
You speak for yourself. What's interesting is that was my initial thought as well, right? And it's right, but there is a little more nuance in it that I didn't think until I went and got there's a specific Bible that I have that goes super deep into the Gospels. It's one line of scripture and then all commentary.
Cool. Okay. I love that you're about to teach me something right now.
I love that I learned it 8 days ago. This is how radio works. It sounds like I know things. That's not true. It sounds like I'm dumb most of the time. But when I do sound like I know things, I say it like I've known it forever, but I just learned it 3 days ago.
Right.
So a little peek behind the curtain.
Or I like to say it like it just came off the top of my head when the truth is I've been thinking about this for weeks.
Well, that's called plagiarism, which I also try to avoid, but whatever. So how that's how you and I understand it, because we know now that Christ is God and Christ is the Savior. The Jewish people hearing that at the time wouldn't have had that understanding.
Right.
The prophet was somebody that everybody must listen to, somebody with good words. The Christ was the person that was going to come and save them.
Save them. Yeah, right.
So here they are listening. It's here's a person who says good words, and here's the person that's going to save us. And that's where this crowd was. But there's another group in this crowd, obviously. That's the masses. But others said, "The Christ will not come from Galilee, will he? Does not the scripture say that the Christ will be of David's family and come from Bethlehem, the village where David lived?" ? So a division occurred in the crowd that some wanted to arrest him and some wanted to lay hands on him. So the people that wanted to arrest Jesus, their qualm was that he wasn't born in Bethlehem, the city of David. I believe, Allison, there's a Christmas song called "O Little Town of Something." Where was Jesus born?
Right. So they just didn't have the facts or what?
Yeah, they didn't know what they were talking about. They had no
Oh, but they
clue.
were so certain though.
Yeah, like, this man is from Galilee. We know that the Christ is from Bethlehem, is going to come from Bethlehem, the city of David. This guy's from Galilee. Let's kill him.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't know the facts. He was literally born in Bethlehem. Like, that's, we know that. People know, like, they didn't, they made this quick snap assumption that he was a Galilean.
Well, they could have also said, okay, so he's from Galilee because that's where he spent his, young adulthood or whatever. They could have also said, no, he's from Nazareth. And so you just, I like that it's not so straightforward. We're going to have to dig.
Yeah, and I'm reading this the first time and like, isn't it going to come from Bethlehem? And I'm like, wait, am I missing something? Like, am I wrong? And I love when I'm not. And I'm just like,
It is a celebration.
Yeah, and I've heard this gospel reading many times, not on Saturday morning mass, but I just read it on my own, and it never really struck me. It never struck me that they were wrong. And like, this is still in John chapter 7. This is one of the first times that they're like, hey, we need to kill this guy. And it came from not hearing him and hearing him say something they didn't like. It came from, he doesn't fit what we think he should be.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's kill him.
Right.
And so I'm like, which group am I in? Which group am I in? Because we have to be in one of these groups. Is Jesus a person who says nice words? And I think even as a person who's been a Christian my whole life, I can still put Jesus in that category sometimes. Yeah, he said nice words, but he doesn't mean that much to me today. Like, I've been there before. I've been in times where he's the Christ, he's the Savior, he's the man. Like, that's the majority, I would hope, right? Like, that's the majority of where he is. But I think there's other times where it's like, I completely misunderstand where Jesus is coming from, so I don't want any part to it, right? And some people, it's been very nice for people to text me over the last like month or two. I've been much less stressed over the last few weeks, ironically enough, with everything going on. But the month before, I was really stressed, and I was trying to guard most of it. To share a little bit of it. And like, people that listen to the show were texting me and be like, hey, we're praying for you. We hope everything's all right.
Yeah.
They're like, something's wrong. And I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't realize it was that obvious.
Yeah.
Right? Where it was like, I think sometimes I'm like, I'm not trusting Jesus with the facts where he's going to take care of me. He's going to love me. He's going to get me through this. And I'm just like, this isn't what you promised, Jesus. Let's kill this relationship,
Yeah, it's so easy for me to separate myself from sin and to separate myself from the Pharisees because they annoy me greatly. They had this very fixed idea of what Jesus was going to come and do. He was going to deliver them from Rome. He was going to have very specific militant strategies, and he was coming to finally deliver these people from all the suffering that they had endured. And when he wasn't doing that, when he was talking, showing up and talking about meekness and, turning other cheeks, and he wasn't fitting this, it would be very Pharisaical of me to say that I have nothing in common with the Pharisees.
Yeah.
And so the question is, how might I also reject who Christ really is based on my perception of who he should be? And so God's power or goodness can never be proven by how I think he ought to behave. And yet I do it all the time. I'm like, this is the way that I think this should go. And when it doesn't, there's kind of this, wait, what? Who are you again? And I have to remind myself that he is limitless and I am limited, and who he is and who I am and the distance in between. And all of that can get really tricky and requires a lot of prayer and reminding and remembering and all of that.
The sad truth is I've focused this week on this passage and the passage of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego being thrown into the fire with King Nebuchadnezzar. The two people that I have connected with the most in scripture this week are the Pharisees and King Nebuchadnezzar, who tried to kill the people of God.
Wow.
I'm like, that's not healthy. I need to do something about this. Right?
I love that.
So here's what happened. Like, this whole story that we have read so far happened after they want to lay hands on him. The chief priests of the Pharisees send guards to go arrest Jesus while he's saying all of these things. Then the next line is, so the guards went to the chief priests and the Pharisees, who asked them, why didn't you bring him? They show back up to the chief priests and the Pharisees, and they're like, without Jesus. They were supposed to go arrest him to kill him right then. And the guards say, Never before has anyone spoken like this man. So the Pharisees answered them, have you also been deceived? Have any of the authorities of the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd who does not know the law is accursed. So then Nicodemus, one of their members who had come to them earlier, does our law condemn a man before it first hears him and finds out what he is doing? And it continues, but here's the thing that strikes me, because I went back and read a few verses beforehand. Of the whole chapter, this happens towards the end of the chapter, I read to you, if I'm comparing as a modern day Catholic, knowing everything that Jesus says, I've read all the Gospels multiple times. Like I've heard what Jesus said. He has said some great things. What I wouldn't say is that the first 16 chapters of John chapter 7, I would not put that in the best of what Jesus said.
Huh.
If I was making a top 10 list of like the best things that Jesus said, the most impactful things that Jesus said, that's not in his most famous. He's saying some pretty basic things and some things that I'm reading it as a modern day Catholic who's read all of this gospel and be like, okay, I see it. These men who had never heard of Jesus are more convicted by the truth of what Jesus said in those verses than I am today.
Interesting.
As a follower of Jesus. Yeah. They're like, never has anybody spoken like this. And I'm like, it was all right.
Yeah.
I was blown away by that.
Yeah, but then asking the question, I mean, taking it to the next level of, okay, so what? Okay, so what am I missing?
Right.
You didn't have to do that.
And I think
the Lord is so pleased with you, Taylor.
Well, not recently, but maybe he will be when I start taking these lessons to heart. And I think that like I said, I've been connecting with the Pharisees, and I think I have gotten too comfortable with Jesus. I've gotten too used to the things that he said. I've gotten too used to like my traditions, just like they got used to their traditions.
Sure, absolutely.
And I'm not hearing Jesus.
Oh, it's so good.
With the power that he spoke with, that these strangers who were sent there to be antagonists against him were like, that guy's awesome.
Yeah. Familiarity, it breeds indifference. I've heard that before. What next?
Jesus and I are too familiar. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you've heard it a million times. So what, meh.
All right. So how do I need to fix it? You're finishing the show today by telling me what I need to do.
You're doing it. This is, there's this moment where you're having a baby. Stay with me.
Well.
Yep. And you grab whoever's closest and you say, I can't do this. And inevitably that person who you have in your clutches, they say to you, it's this very inspired thing. It just comes. They say, you are doing it. This is it. And so that doesn't mean that it's easy or fun or painless, but you are doing it. You're doing the work.
So this is how my brain works. How I just pictured that moment for you was you grabbing someone one day after the baby had been born and be like, ma'am, I'm just here to change your sheets. Allison, thanks so much for joining me today. I'll be back next week. See ya!